Two Canadians who have been detained in China for 18 months have now been charged with spying. Prosecutors have now formally laid charges against Michael Kovrig and Michael Spavor, who had been detained on allegations of espionage. The escalation in this legal saga comes after a BC Supreme Court dismissed an application from Huawei executive Meng Wanzhou to avoid extradition to the United States over fraud charges. Chinese prosecutors say Michael Kovrig was charged in Beijing on suspicion of spying for state secrets and intelligence, while Michael Spavor was charged near the North Korean border on suspicion of spying for a foreign entity and illegally providing state secrets. And for more on this developing story, we're joined by international affairs columnist and global news contributor Matthew Fisher. Matthew, thank you so much for taking the time this morning.
Nice to speak with you again, Anthony.
Is there any other way to look at this other than retaliation by the Chinese?
There is no other way to look at this. This is the way China conducts diplomacy, not just with Canada, but with many other countries. It's a slow process, 577 days. The two Michaels have already been detained, Anthony, but now a very ominous turn because Chinese courts just about always convict, and then after the conviction, negotiations begin about whether somebody can be let go in kind of a prisoner swap, if you like, or maybe for some trade concessions. But we're at a stage now where it seems they will be convicted. It's a process that will take several years. And it is one that tells us that China does not care what the world thinks at all. It is the obvious country that's in the last 24 hours been creating problems with cyber war with Australia. It has a trade war with Australia. Now, of course, it's suggested that it doesn't like Canadian lumber. We don't have sanctions against Canadian lumber, but that's the log part of it alone, which is what they're looking at. They say they're Canadian beetles. Is $380 million a year, fairly significant. There are other ways they could hit us too. Tourism is one, and of course all those Canadian or Chinese students in Canada, 140,000 of them. If they go home with all their tuition, that might have a crippling effect on some Canadian universities.
Now, there's so much politics at play. I want to get into more of that in a moment. But so with what we know so far, obviously China's court system very closed, very secretive. Do we have any evidence presented whatsoever against, because these are obviously incredibly serious charges against these two individuals?
There has been no evidence from the Chinese side whatsoever about anything regarding the two Michaels, although the Chinese ambassador did admit a couple of months ago that basically China had kidnapped them and was using them as hostages, barter for Miss Meng, the Chinese woman who's a senior executive of Huawei, and she's the daughter of the owner of Huawei, the 5G company that wants into Canada. And they don't like that Canada's holding her for extradition to the United States. And the Chinese people are whipped up into anger by their media about how badly she's treated, but she's actually free to go all over Vancouver. Her detention is very loose. The Canadians are held without seeing their lawyers or family with bright lights over their head 24 hours a day. No comparison whatsoever. China has been very ugly towards them.
Now, Matthew, we don't have a lot of time, but I want to get a sense of where you see this going now, because obviously she is in Vancouver. The United States want her to be sent and to be charged and convicted. Where do you see this going?
I think because the extradition hearing will take perhaps another year or two with all the appeals, that this will enter sort of a calm period for them, a terrible period, but a calm one. But we can expect trade sanctions or something like that. Without a doubt, there will be more measures taken against Canada. Canada better be ready for them. And Canada has, until now, used a kind of very quiet diplomacy. That clearly has not worked, being polite.
Matthew, we have to leave it there. We really appreciate your insight and your time this morning. Thank you so much. It's Matthew Fisher, international affairs columnist.